Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Cilla Travis, back with another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to attach your crinoline to a peplum with lining. So right now I'm working with a 3 inches wide crinoline. Okay, so there are various texture of crinoline and various width of crinoline in the market. So you want to go for a thicker texture in order to get that really standing effect on your peplum. Okay, and also the volume of your peplum skirt also affect how your peplum stands. Okay, so if you want that very curvy, wavy standing effect, you might want to increase your peplum from 360 degree to 720 degree. Okay, so right now I'm just going to place marking on my fabric and my lining so I can identify which part is the front and which part is the back. Okay, can you be my soldier, my soldier? Can you be my soldier? Next, you want to layer your fabric and lining in this manner. First, you want your lining facing the right side of your fabric. That is, you want the right side of lining facing the right side of fabric. You want your lining on top of fabric and crinoline on top lining, like so. A very important tip when sewing a crinoline, you want to sew with either 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch at most. But for me, I'm going to be sewing with 1 centimeter, which is 3/8 of an inch. And when you sew, it is very important that you don't pull. You don't pull the crinoline. You want the crinoline to conform to the hem of your peplum when you sew. You don't need to pull it to make it conform to the curve of your hem. I know this can be very tricky, but as much as you can, do not pull the crinoline when you're sewing. Okay, so for a beginner, I would advise that you pin the crinoline first. I'm going to be sewing with 1 centimeter, which is 3/8 of an inch, and then you want to carefully and patiently pin your crinoline to the hem of your peplum. Okay, making sure you do not pull or stretch the crinoline as you go. Now once this is done, you're going to take this to the sewing machine and sew it. Remember, you should sew this with at least 1/4 of an inch and at most 1/2 of an inch. So I'm not going to pin mine all the way through because I can handle it. So I'm just going to go ahead and carefully sew the crinoline to the peplum. Remember, do not pull when you sew. Don't struggle with the crinoline, but just carefully guide it through the curve of the hem of the peplum when you sew. You can see that is what I'm using my right hand to do. I'm using my index finger to just carefully guide the crinoline on the hem of the peplum as I sew. And after sewing, this is what I have. So what you want to do right now is to turn the peplum to the right side, okay? And once you've turned the peplum to the right side, we'll need to top stitch. So what you want to do at this point is to flip all the seam allowance toward the lining and top stitch on the right side of the lining. So this is a tip you have to, store in your memory whenever you're sewing a crinoline to your circle skirt or your peplum or whatever you're working on. So just follow the illustration while I sew. So as I said, you want to flip the seam allowance toward the lining like so, and then you want to top stitch 1/8 of an inch. This should be the width of your seam. You want to top stitch 1/8 of an inch on the right side of the lining. Okay. And as I'm sewing, I'm using my fingers to feel the fabric just to make sure that the seam allowance is turned toward the lining, because I cannot see what is under, but I can feel it. Okay, so from time to time, especially when you're going through those curvy edges, you want to go under and make sure the seam allowance is flipped toward the lining. So this is the most challenging part when it comes to attaching your crinoline on your peplum with lining.
Put me on a long penny, yeah. Baby, I go show my face, so boy, you keep me running, coming for more. Tell me what is wrong with me. See, as you did make me sing, oh, you put a spell on me.
So guys, you can see how my top stitch looks like. This came out clean. So you want to patiently do this so as to have a very clean finishing. Okay. So after doing the top stitch, you would have something like this. So at this point, you want to give the peplum a very good press. You know, one thing about the crinoline is that it is made of plastic, and when you apply it to plastic, it contracts, okay? So you're going to make sure you give this a good press, and you're going to have something like this. Now for the edges of the crinoline at the center back, I'm going to have to seal it up, because even after using a zipper and using a Cilla to overlock the edges of your fabric at the center back, it's still going to pierce your skin. So here is what I'm going to do to seal up the edge. This is just one way to fix the problem. There are other methods out there that works, but this works for me. So I'm going to take a masking tape and flip the peplum open to the wrong side, and then use the masking tape to cover the edge of the crinoline like so. So I'm going to do this twice, okay? I'm going to double the masking tape and repeat the process. And once I've done this, I'm going to flip over the peplum to the wrong side, and I'm going to sew the edge of the lining and the fabric together with just 1/8 of an inch. But do make sure you use a very tight stitch to sew the edge of the peplum. So once this is done, I'm going to flip the peplum over to the right side, and this will cover up the edge of the crinoline. This is how my peplum looks like. It came out beautiful, clean, it's perfect. So as I said, if you want a more standing and curvy effect, you would want to increase the volume of your peplum from 360 degree to 720 just to get that, you know, flowy, curvy, standing effect. So guys, once this is done, you can go ahead and attach this to a top or to a skirt, or you can add a waistband and use it as a belt, whatever you choose to do with it. Well guys, I do hope you find this tutorial helpful. If you do, remember to like this video, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.